School shootings. I have to do a podcast about school shootings based on the question, why do white boys keep shooting? As the question, as well as the title of the text, being why white boys keep shooting implies, these school shootings are often committed by white boys, as it can be instance for be seen on the picture from the Columbine High School shooting, where two white boys did the school shooting. And I ask myself, why is there this connection? Why is it that white boys tend to do school shootings? And the text answers this. It says that it has very much to do with this white denial, as the white communities tend to blame other ethnicities, which is shown in a quote. I'm quoting: "We concoct fantasies to relieve us from us of responsibility. The hostiles Indians were the problem, the uppity Negroes, the filthy immigrants, the teeming Latinos. They keep coming and coming. Everyone's a problem but white, middle-class, Anglo-Saxon Protestants," which really underlines the very problem there is with this white denial, which is furthermore shown by the fact that the white community argue that they see themselves as innocent, as the crime rates are really high, or higher in the, for example, the black communities. Wherefore it really becomes sort of, there comes this sort of invisibility among the white community, which is seen in another quote. It says, "When you're white, you have the luxury of invisibility," which really just shows that you, because of this this lack of like, yeah, other crimes, or that the other no other crimes in the same amount as in the black communities are happening in the white communities, you become sort of invisible, and the people don't really like fear that you will do something, wherefore they won't really prevent it, and so on. So there's really an inattention to the warning signs, which is the real problem in the white community, together with the white denial. But there's also another question I like to ask, being, but what leads to these outrageous school shootings, and why do they only happen in the US? And I believe that it has very much to do with the American dream, as the American dream is this idyllic perception of how to live and what to get out of your life, meaning that you have to achieve achieve some, like, rich, what is it called, meaning that you have to become rich and be wealthy in order to achieve this American dream. And as another quote shows, it says, "Both white and minorities want to achieve the American dream. In adolescence, when the dream seems impossible or difficult to reach, all children tend to rebel. The result is your classy sex, drugs, and rock and roll," which shows that one of the core problems of this American country, of America, as people, or the youth, often really see it as being impossible to reach this dream, that they feel that they have to, and wherefore they tend to rebel. But there's a clear difference here, because it's only white boys, it's not black or another minority people who tend to do the school shootings. So I ask again, why doesn't black people do it? And it's really underlined in another quote, saying, "Not to romanticize the suffering of minorities, but when you're buffeted by poverty or racism, you build up the defense and copying mechanisms. You're able to cope with disappointment and failure and navigate the obstacles in your life. White people don't have to grow up that way. There's a flip side to racial privilege. There are dysfunctions, things about being dominant and privileged that we really ought to rethink, which really shows that because of the harder or the what's it called what is it called the I guess you could say other problems in the, for example, black community, they they tend to be stronger and as it says, build up a defense mechanisms, which means that they can't really that they can, I mean, defend with cope with disappointment and failure. uh, but then there's these white boys who haven't been or had this pressure on them and haven't suffered from poverty or racism, which means that they haven't built up this ability to cope with the disappointment. And furthermore, as another quote shows, it says, uh, when they do fail, they still believe they deserve the American dream. Either way, they demand the respect and power they believe is their birthright, which shows that these white boys feel that they really deserve to achieve the American dream and really believe that. And as they haven't learned to cope with this disappointment, they tend to do something insane, as for example, committing a school shooting, or some of them does, some of them do, which could be why there's this connection. And another thing could be maybe a lack of compassion, which could be really a societal problem with America as well, which is shown in another quote. It says, "We have created a densitized society that neither values nor teaches compassion," which really shows another problem with the American community today, as they do not teach nor value compassion, meaning that the school shooters, these white boys, don't really understand the consequences and don't really reflect over the consequence of what they're doing. Another question I asked myself was, why is it often white boys from suburban and rural schools and not those from inner city schools who tend to commit these school shootings? And the text really answers this, as it or at least it tries to, as it argues that the boys in the inner cities tend to go to gangs or join gangs, whereas these young, often white boys in the suburban and rural country schools, I mean, don't have this option, wherefore they become these loners, who therefore see no other opportunity than to rebel and do something crazy to scream out their frustration. And another question I asked myself was, why only boys and why not girls? Why wouldn't girls be doing the same, as they must feel the same problem with being white, I guess. But then again, the text argues that women, it says, the women know a lot more about the real consequences of war and killing because they provide the fodder. They endure the consequences, which really underlines a problem in the male behavior, as we don't tend to think as much about the consequences, and as we don't really know what the consequences are, maybe. And whereas women, they are the ones who provide the fodder, as it says. They know how heartbreaking it can be to lose a child, and what consequences it can have, and so on. And some other debatable shooting factors, or factors that could be provoking these school shootings, could be violent movies and games and so on. But the text really disagrees with this, and I do, or I believe it really doesn't, or can't make it or make people do something as crazy as they can see the difference between a game and real life, and a movie and real life. And again, a problem with the American society being the accessibility to guns, which is through the Second Amendment ensured. They are ensured to have the right to keep and bear arms, which maybe explains why these school shootings caused or done by white boys only occur in the U.S. and not other countries, and so on.